Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a question that seems to come up again and again. Why is Pakistan's economy always in a state of crisis? We're going to break down a really sharp analysis by Dr. Niaz Murtaza to get some answers.
Okay, let's jump right into the core of it. The central question we're really exploring today is this. How can a country with such a powerful state have an economy that's just constantly struggling? It's a huge paradox, and it's right at the heart of the problem.
So, to really get this paradox, we've got to first look at what the author calls the fundamental contradiction of the entire system. And honestly, it explains a lot about the country's economic troubles.
Right, so the source points out that the Pakistani state has immense power. I mean, we're talking about a government that has the muscle to weaken courts, jail its opponents, and basically push things through, all under the banner of national interest. But what's all that power actually being used for? And this, right here, this is the whole game. All that incredible state power, it isn't being channeled into growing the economy or building something that lasts. No, the author argues it's all about one thing: political survival. It's for cutting deals with powerful friends and shutting down anyone who disagrees, all while the public good kind of gets left behind.
Okay, so if the government has all this authority, what's it actually doing to fix the economy? Well, according to the author, they've tried two main strategies, and, spoiler alert, both are seen as deeply flawed.
First up, you've got the classic IMF austerity playbook. And as you can see, it's a mixed bag, to put it lightly. Sure, on one hand, it managed to bring down inflation, but on the other hand, it absolutely crushed economic growth, basically leaving the country stuck in neutral, and its people feeling even poorer. And then there's the government's own plan for growth. You can see here there's this massive gap between the goal and what actually happens. They want to boost exports. They form what the author just calls committees of incompetence. They want more investment. They take trips to the Gulf that, don't really bring back much cash.
So instead of a solid long-term plan, the focus shifts to these shortcuts, chasing quick money in things like crypto, corporate farming, or mining. But here's the thing. The author argues this doesn't build a real, sustainable industrial base. It's just crony capitalism in disguise, where your connections matter more than your product, and it just makes a few people rich without really developing the country.
So if the austerity plan is a dead end, and the crony capitalism shortcuts are too, what is the real problem here? This brings us to the author's main diagnosis, the one missing ingredient in this whole recipe.
The author says the entire economic debate in Pakistan is basically trapped. It's stuck between two bad options: the crony capitalism we just talked about, or the IMF's approach, which usually means shrinking the state and letting the free market do its thing. But successful countries like China prove there's another way.
And that missing piece, according to the source, is this idea of intelligent design. Now, this isn't about just letting the market run wild. It's about having a smart, capable state that actively guides the economy. A state that has a real industrial policy, that pushes exports like crazy, and that plans its reforms carefully. This quote just sums it up perfectly. The goal shouldn't be to just blindly shrink the state. It's about making it smarter, more effective, cut the fat for sure, but also build the economic muscle the country needs to actually grow.
All right, so let's look at how this lack of a smart plan actually traps Pakistan in this destructive loop that the author calls its fatal habit.
This right here shows the cycle that just keeps repeating. It goes like this. The economy shows a tiny bit of growth, but that growth is fueled by a flood of imports the country can't afford. Then the foreign currency runs out, and boom, you're in a crisis, and you have to go right back to the IMF for another bailout. And the whole thing starts all over again.
And listen, this isn't some ancient history lesson. The source points out that this exact same pattern is happening right now. Even with pathetic growth of just 2 or 3%, imports are already climbing, exports are flat, and that trade gap is getting wider.
So this puts the country's leaders in what the author calls a state of double jeopardy, basically a no-win situation. They don't have the competence to create sustainable export-led growth, and they don't have the money to pay for the fake import-led kind. The only moves left are to borrow more and squeeze the local economy even harder.
So where does all of this leave us? What's the final takeaway? According to the author, what's the only way to actually break this exhausting cycle of pain without any real progress to show for it?
The author's conclusion is that the real solution here, it's not economic, it's political. You can't just tinker with policies anymore. The source argues the only way out, the only path to salvation, requires 3 huge changes: real civilian control over the state, genuine democratic accountability, and finally, a competent government that actually has a clear economic vision.
And that brings us to the author's last, really powerful thought. Pakistan's failure isn't because it lacks power, and it's not even because it lacks reforms. It's failing because it lacks competence. It lacks the vision to use all that power to build a strong economy for everyone, not just to keep the powerful in power. And that leaves us with a big question. Can the country find the political will to finally break this cycle, or is it just doomed to repeat the past?